Good morning, everybody. So, next to me, I really shouldn't have to introduce you guys, everybody knows who you are, but I have Senator Scott, Chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and Representative French Hill, who is Chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. And by the way, Congressman, I understand that there was a recent executive order signed by the President, and you will be changing your name to American Hill. Is that?
Ha! That's good. I remember freedom fries after 9/11, so yeah, that's good.
So we're going to talk about legislation and regulation, but I really want to start with something a little bit more personal. I know why all the people in the room are here and how important digital assets in blockchain are to all of us. But why is this a priority for you? Because this certainly is not a priority for everybody in Congress, but the two of you see this as a priority, and I just want to know why.
For me, it's kind of a simple reason. Having grown up in a single-parent household in poverty, the one thing that's motivated me in public service is thinking about the challenges my mother had, meeting the simple obligations of life. You hit a light switch, you want it to come on, but if you don't have enough money, it doesn't come on. The whole theory of democratization, making it easier for her to pay her bills, to have access to the financial system. I look at the lessons taught to me by my nephew, little Ben, about the crypto world and how democratization is embedded in the notion of digital assets. And if I wanted to do the right thing for those single mothers working hard, for those Americans who look at the American dream and really wonder, does it really work in neighborhoods like mine? This opportunity is once in a lifetime. And so leaning into it a few years ago because of watching my mother work really hard and having a nephew who's invested heavily and done really well in this business, it really whetted my appetite to take a second look at it and start dabbling in it myself. And I'm now excited about where we are in the alignment, working with French, who is brilliant on all things banking and digital assets, and having the White House leaning in and leading the charge. It's time for us to make sure that innovation happens in America before regulation keeps it out of our country.
That's a good start.
Well, for me, it's easy. I've spent 4 decades in my career trying to remove unnecessary agency costs and impediments to innovation. And when I look at what's available through blockchain and going to Web3, I think it's essential for American leadership. So I share my good friend Chairman Scott's views about the inclusive nature of a payment system that's on a blockchain, and we're going to talk more about that today. But the big picture for me of removing agency costs and making things simpler with better documentation, less fraud, is, I think, the future of peer-to-peer transactions, decentralized finance, but just generally to move to this blockchain operating system, I think holds great promise. And I've spent my whole career trying to do disruptive technology in finance, and so what it's attracted me to this whole cause for the last 5 years that I've worked on this project has been about disruptive innovation to lower costs, improve choice for consumers, and bring greater competition.
I think it's great that we actually now have an opportunity to talk about these things and how this industry can help solve those problems. You mentioned we have a different administration, a much more positive approach. And the president has done and is doing a lot by executive action, but that's not the end game, I assume. So at some point, Congress needs to play a role. So where do you play vis-a-vis all of the executive actions that we've seen so far?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, I think Tim would agree with me that law is made in Congress, not by executive order. What executive orders do for a president is deliver on his priorities or her priorities. What do they think is important? And how can they take executive action within the laws of the land to improve an outcome in that priority? So President Trump, I think, has done an outstanding job, and we've seen results by naming David Sachs as an AI digital advisor, asking all of his agencies, what are the barriers that government has created against the use, expansion, innovation of digital assets. So that's number one. I think they're well underway. And for example, what Hester Peirce is doing in a complete 180-degree turnaround at what was a catastrophically ill-run, bad set of decisions by the former chairman, whose name will go unmentioned here. That's the kind of effort that he wanted me to mention it so that there could be audience sounds, but we're going to dodge it. So that's the role of executive action. But to make permanent change, you don't make permanent change in policy through executive action. That's why leadership in the Senate and the House to craft a stablecoins regime that can make America the principal home for stablecoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, and a regulatory framework so that we have some place to use those stablecoins in the U.S. will lead to more innovation. So it's a combination. And I'm so delighted that we have a bicameral partnership and a partnership that we share with President Trump's leader, David Sachs. And we did a bicameral agriculture and financial services and banking press conference with David at the beginning of the Trump administration to signal we're in this together and we're going to accomplish change the law and change the rules in the executive branch.
I'll just say that from my estimation, I can't think of anybody who was more opposed to this industry than Gensler at the SEC. He was pathetic.
You did mention his name, though.
Just pathetic. Thank you. Can I get a boo over here? That's what it is. Yes. You got to set your boos up in the audience. Thank you very much.
The audience is on cue.
I love it. This is great. But hey, let's think about it from just a real world perspective. If you want change to be permanent, the one thing you don't want to have is every 4 years for there to be such volatility that we're here today, we're gone tomorrow, we're back. The only way to make it permanent is exactly what French was talking about. It is so critical that we have a president that leads. He doesn't lead from the back. President Trump always leads from the front. It's just who he is. And we thank God that he's our president. But more importantly, he leads where he actually believes that the American people, the blue-collar comeback starts with digital assets and a conversation about democratization and eliminating the middleman whenever possible. And by doing so, we have a president through executive fiat that's making massive changes. And we had a president previously, President Biden and his entire administration, led by folks like Elizabeth Warren and others, who were just opposed to this industry, setting up roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And President Trump comes in and changes it. The question is, how do you eliminate that kind of volatility? Because business needs certainty and predictability. You want that embedded in the laws of our country, not just the regulatory environment of a country. And when you embed it into the laws of our country, what you get is permanence in a way that it takes a catastrophic occurrence to eliminate it. Good news is we've found a way of sweetening the pot to make this a bipartisan conversation in the United States Senate, so as to have the votes to make this permanent. And thankfully, we have strong leadership in the House, led by French Hill, the chairman of the committee, that understands the industry intimately. And we're working on not just legislative proposals, but legislation that will be signed into law so that business has certainty and predictability. Those two words changed my financial life and part of my community. It will change this nation if we have it in the digital asset space.
It's wonderful. By the way, you mentioned Senator Warren, the ranking member of the committee, and I assume that kind of like the way Scalia and Ginsburg used to get along together, that when you guys are done for the day, you hang out over beers and watch Nationals games and stuff, right?
Yeah, you're too optimistic.
But you talked about administrative actions, and I think the message is we have to be patient because Congress has an important role to play. The president can set a philosophy and agenda, but you're the implementers of that. You also talked about this certain gentleman, or at least one of you didn't say his name, and I feel like the Israelites, we spent 4 years wandering through the desert, and now we've finally found our destination. And I think I assume it opens a door to have appropriate and productive conversations with regulatory agencies like the SEC and the CFTC. And so just as you talked about kind of the role between Congress and the administration with respect to executive actions, what does that relationship now look like between Congress and these administrative bodies? And how do we work together now? Because we seem to have a lot of new opportunities.
Yeah, I think in your analogy, let my people go. that's the next phrase that comes to mind. And the way we do that is to make sure that we have a bicameral working conversation. French has been fantastic at coming to the table and saying, let's make sure that we are touching gloves on a consistent basis, whether it's weekly or every other week, so that we make sure that there's no daylight. What we have to have is actual results that can be measured in reasonable time. And having the president have the crypto czar, the IA czar in place, he has two major hats. Having, frankly, tomorrow, we'll have the SEC's nominee in front of the committee, and Paul is going to be fantastic. So having this kind of alignment where we're able to get these folks in place quickly, and then if you look at the Economic Council put in place by President Trump, they lean into digital assets, from Scott Bassett over to Kevin Hassett and Stephen Myron. We saw Stephen at the committee just a few weeks ago. And so with that kind of firepower in the White House, with French and his team doing their work in the House, and with me and our team, Cynthia Lum is leading the way, Bill Haggerty working daily. For the first time, we have a subcommittee on digital assets in the United States Senate. I put it together at the beginning of my term as chairman. We're going to make sure that we get the job done, because the alignment that we have right now has never been seen before.
So I agree with Tim that we're in the milk and honey business here to keep our Exodus analogy going. President Trump's decisions, first and foremost, are to appoint outstanding people, and he's done that. And tomorrow, Tim and his committee will hear from Paul Atkins, who's going to be outstanding. The second thing that he can do and is doing is look across the agencies on barriers, and that's where I think Hester Peirce has done a splendid job as the chair for the SEC of where can we break down the barriers to digital assets in the commission without legislation, which is the point of your question. Exemptive relief is available. You've seen the administration withdraw one of the dumbest rules written in my 10 years in Washington, which is Staff Accounting Bulletin 121 on the custody of digital assets, where Senator Scott and I got a strong bipartisan vote in both chambers, including the minority leader, Mr. Schumer, to reject it, and yet, Biden vetoed that work. It was a huge mistake by the president, huge mistake for the bureaucrats at the commission to draft it. So, appoint good people, number one. The Senate will confirm them, and they are outstanding nominees. We have everybody in the financial sector named except the FDIC chair, and we have an outstanding acting FDIC chair in Travis Hill now. Withdraw bad rules like 121 and see where they can use exemptive relief to move the agenda forward while we're making permanent change by negotiating legislation. So we're coordinated, we're working well together, and we appreciate the president asking David Sachs to be the point person for us in the administration.
Well, we're grateful that that particular rule got revoked. Let me ask you just a follow-up. So because of the way the SEC looked at things over the last 4 years, everything was, it's all SEC, it's all the security, they control it all. We know that that's not true.
Right.
And so we're still talking a lot about the SEC and in the CFTC, but there are a lot of other administrative agencies, I would assume now, are going to play an important role going forward as well that don't get as much attention. I mean,
just to carry out the thought, there are things that are not a commodity and not a security.
Right.
So they're subject to being a thing in our economy. So maybe the FTC plays some role in consumer affairs in some manner, or the states, but they just exist. So an NFT, I'm not sure, is covered necessarily in that manner. when we look at the future of decentralized finance. I mean, that will require some fit-for-purpose work along the way, but that's beyond, in a way, the scope of what we're tackling by creating a dollar-backed stablecoin and creating a regulatory framework that makes a distinction for tokens between being neither a security or a commodity or one or the other, and making sure they have the right place to trade.
One of the things that Charles on the front row here, who's on the panel before, I've spent some time with Charles, and he's always in education, as you already know. And one of the things we were talking about is that this parallel universe where we have CFTC versus the SEC, we have digital assets, we have digital assets that are securities, and digital assets are seen as commodities or securities. And Charles was like, Tim, there are like a dozen other applications which would include the military and beyond. And so trying to find a way to create a structure that works beyond the two the major categories, I think, is why he asked for a thoughtful approach to market structure that considers more. Obviously, Cynthia Lummis in her legislation had ancillary assets that allowed for the fork in the road to be decided in a process. I think that for us to contemplate it long term is important, as long as we get to the finish line between now and August. Because what we don't want is to waste the opportunity of the alignment that we have. But to your point, other areas of the government that will be really important in this conversation includes the OCC. The acting comptroller, Rodney Hood, just affirmed the legislation that I sponsored, the FIRM Act, that said that debanking is based on reputational risk, is being purged from their operating documents so as to allow for the digital asset space to be banked. Having no ability to have the banks participating in this process is a problem. And frankly, Wyoming went their own way and created their own framework that was helpful. But we don't want impediments. We want progress. And competition is frankly good. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we have and how we achieve it. So OCC, FDIC, SEC, the entire alphabet soup within our financial footprint, all important, but so is the military and beyond. And so I think we'll see multiple applications as we consider the real world opportunities that are unfolding, and some, according to Charles, is brilliant, yet to be seen applications. And so we're looking forward to that future as well.
I think that's an important point, and that's why I think it's important to think about David Sachs as digital assets, artificial intelligence leader for President Trump. This goes way beyond finance. We're talking about finance and what's a tokenized dollar-backed stablecoin payment and how one uses blockchain in a financial function and how one can apply tokenization of real-world assets or decentralized finance, because that's what we do. But there's a whole world out there that was my opening comment, that's the forest, not trees in the forest.
Yeah.
That is the use of blockchain operating systems to, as I say, lower agency costs, lower friction in the system, increase documentations, be able to do programmable work to, I think, benefit both consumers in a military context and in an industrial context. I see it every day. People aren't talking about it because they're afraid of being attacked by some federal regulator. And so that's why I'm so pleased that we have a change in tone in DC and that we can do our work in an effective way. And if we're successful, then the application of blockchain way beyond finance will be even more successful.
Well, it's so wonderful to hear this, because if you think about it, we were taking laws that are almost 100 years old that were written to regulate securities transactions when they were pieces of paper and trying to apply them to digital programmable software. It is impossible. And so thank you for that. So this leads us, I think, into the legislative aspect of what both of you are championing right now. This panel was titled Keeping America the Crypto Capital. I think that was aspirational, to be honest. I think we should be and we will be, but I don't think we are right now, because we've let a lot of other countries innovate while we have been stymied. And so if we look at capital markets, for example, that are, for the most part, global, we've seen a lot of, over the years, many years, harmonization among the regulations of different countries. So as we start to claim our role in this, how do we look at these other countries? What do we have to do as far as harmonization and taking into consideration some of the innovation that we've already seen outside of the United States?
I'm bullish that we are able to regain the high ground of digital supremacy. And if you think about why the industry left our shores, so to speak, it's because we made it impossible to do business here. The good news is making it easy to do business here, I believe, allows for the onshoring to happen. We're already seeing that, hearing that, and feeling it, and it's more to come. I think what we have to do is make sure that we continue to be that city on the hill perspective, or at least our approach. And by doing that, I think we attract more folks here with the simple concept of innovation before regulation. And to the extent that we have a light touch framework put in place, it allows for folks to make this to destiny. And then we will be able to regain that supremacy. We do not have it now. We lost it through the challenges and the roadblocks put in place by the Biden administration. The only way to regain that position and to have the conversation really start and or arrive here is to have the Trump administration do what they've done, which is to be not just open for business, but to be bullish about doing business here.
Not be afraid of it.
Not at all. Just to that point, not to be afraid of it. My mother's a wonderful person, and I love her a lot, and she was asking me about, I was celebrating the Genius Act, and she's like, well, what is the Genius Act? And I said, well, stablecoin. And she was like, stable who? I was like, stablecoin. She's like, well, what is a stablecoin? I said, Mom, just think about it this way. It's like having a traveler's check on the blockchain. It's like, oh, I'm not sure what a blockchain is, but I know what a traveler's check is. And so if you can just make the conversation useful for people who don't understand it yet, they go, oh, and it becomes a serious conversation. If that happens a lot, we win big time.
Well, we're the single best location for foreign direct investment in the world. People want to come to the United States. We have the academics, we have the workforce, we have an open system that allows people to come into our country legally and work to create the most amazing things. And we constantly are talking about how you want to come be in America. Our rule of law, the US dollar, our legal system, our light touch approach to so many things compared to other relative jurisdictions, particularly in the morass that you see in Europe. But there's one industry we're not open for business. And it's a place where it's just a natural extension of the success we've had in every other aspect of not only the Silicon Revolution since the 60s, but the web revolution since the 90s. And it's the use of blockchain and tokenized payments. And we're going to fix that. And when we do, this year, we will be the jurisdiction in which to have a dollar-backed stablecoin. Come, innovate, code, and innovate and raise capital around a digital assets project. And we will have a clear way on how you do that and what the rules are, and that mainstream firms can participate as well as the venture capital community, the coders, the innovators. And what Joe Biden did, I like to say Joe Biden, like the vice president said Joe Biden. It's like one word. It's like what Joe Biden did with Gary Gensler was send all that talent outside the U.S. We're like closed for foreign direct investment in this business. And we're going to change that. And we will once again take our rightful place as we are in the $100 trillion traditional capital markets business, be at position number one in the world. And with the partnership of Donald Trump, Tim Scott, French Hill, our great committee chairs like Brian Stahl, you heard from this morning, Cynthia Loomis, we're going to make this happen.
That's fabulous. If people remember one thing that comes out of this panel, it's what you said, we're open for business now. That's wonderful. We heard from Congressman Stiles this morning on the Genius Act and the Stable Act, and you two are playing incredibly important roles in that. But because we're almost out of time, I'm actually going to skip over that, if I may, and talk about market structure, because I think I'd love to hear from both of you. Where are we going next? We know the importance of starting with clarity for stablecoins, because again, that creates opportunity for payments, for cross-border financial activities. But where are we going next? So talk a little bit about Market Structure Act and kind of what you see and want to see happening for the rest of the year.
Let me spend 10 seconds and then flip it to the chairman. Last year, we had a market structure bill, bipartisan, with strong Republican leadership, but it was bipartisan leadership, called Fit for Purpose, 21st Century Act. We called it Fit 21. We got 71 Democratic votes on the House floor there, clearly bipartisan. We've taken in technical assistance on that. We're going to publish here in the next few days, a revision to that draft and have a couple of hearings around it. But to have a place to use a stable coin, you got to have a regulatory framework. So we're going to do that work, and we're going to work with Senator Loomis in the Senate, John Bozeman in the Ag Committee, Senator Scott to bring that to reality this year as well.
Last word for me on market structure. Once again, Charles has been so helpful for me in just understanding and appreciating the complexity. It's not just commodities versus securities. It's far beyond that. And so understanding and appreciating the magnitude of the opportunity to create a market structure is really important. One of the things he recommended was, why don't we get the industry in Russell 325, massive room, give them 3 weeks, assign them 3 weeks to go out there and figure out market structure where the world is not driven towards CFTC because they're open and SEC was closed because of Gensler. Let's make sure we understand the new terrain and give the industry an opportunity to weigh in with a world that is fair versus one that was consistently unfair.
Okay, so that's an invitation for everybody in this audience to participate.
Please call Charles. His cell phone number is 100. I don't care.
No.
But it's just
But if I may be so bold, on behalf of the audience, I really want to thank both of you for your amazing leadership role and how you are working to make this country the crypto capital of the world. So thank you
Thank you all very much.